Hello, this is Socially Triggered, and this video is going to be on the problem with capitalism. Now, I'm very proud to be a capitalist, and this might seem like I'm going to contradict myself in terms of saying that, but what I've seen recently is capitalism is being demonized by those on the left, and it's also being demonized by those on the right. Often what happens is on the left, they demonize capitalism for just being capitalism. They think that socialism is obviously better and that if the government just did everything, then the world would be a better place, which is pretty scary, but that's kind of the belief of the left, that it's unfair that, things are not distributed evenly amongst all the people of the world. Um, and that's kind of their belief. The right believes something similar in a weird way because the right believes that there is a real problem with capitalism because what happens is there's excessive wealth in the hands of a few, and that excessive wealth in those hands of few leads to influence in the government, and it leads to these kind of like elitist groups that kind of try to decide everything for everyone else. They control the media, they control the movie industry, and they control everything. And as a result of that power, these elitists sort of rule the world in a very evil way. And that's sort of the opinion on the right. You'll hear words like elitist used a lot within the, the lexicon of the people on the right, especially in the media. If you watch Fox News, it's always those elitists are doing whatever. So both sides demonize uh, capitalism for the same thing in a way, because they're both looking at this income inequality as being the issue. And they also look at the influence of capitalism in government. And they see that capitalism is a corrupting force of the government. So I'm going to give you my interpretation of it, and I'm going to try to show you how it's not really that capitalism is corrupting the government. It's the government corrupts capitalism. And the reason I say that is if you look at the government, it tries to provide a system, a working system that people have to live within. And that's a system of laws, it's a system of rules, it's a system of regulations that companies have to follow. And it's a system that, because it exists, companies, they don't have 100% free will. They have to constantly go to the government and basically say, what can we do to change these rules? Or how can we basically get these rules to benefit our company or not destroy our company? Because a lot of the times rules can be very detrimental to business. A good example is a lot of people, like especially on the left, they love the regulations. They want the government to basically help protect everybody. And one group that's really popular right now is the disabled. And there's a big push for making everything accessible. And for the most part, I think that's a good cause. Making things accessible is a worthy cause. Like it seems very discriminatory and kind of bad that we can't, if we're in a wheelchair, we can't access a shop or whatever. And it seems unfair, that you wouldn't be able to access things if you're in a wheelchair. So there's rules that the government has created to allow for accessibility. And those rules sometimes make business impossible. And the example that I'll give you is a small shop. Now, a small shop might not be able to afford to add that wheelchair ramp. And that wheelchair ramp can cost anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 to add to a shop. And that could make or break the business. Like a small mom and pop, they can't really afford, such a big expense. So what happens is they say, well, we can't do this business anymore because we just can't afford this accessibility thing. And they might not even have any patrons of their business that require that wheelchair ramp. And I've seen shops where they make accommodations, like when they don't have a wheelchair thing, they actually go out and get one of their employees to help the person in with the wheelchair, and that works fine. But once you have a regulation that you must have a wheelchair ramp, well, either you comply or you're out of business. And that can be very dangerous. So bigger companies like a Walmart, well, they have like one or two entrances to their building, and it's very easy for them to add a wheelchair ramp to it, and they can make it very easily accessible. And because they have huge volume, that cost isn't really as big as it would be for a small vendor. So a Walmart, well, they see small vendors, like small shops, as competition, rightly so. If you think about it, they're the big fish, and these little fish could be, trying to eat the same food, which is the customers. And what happens is that Walmarts will be like, okay, if we can get everyone to comply to this rule that it's easy for us to comply to, but we know that it's hard for them to comply to, we can put them out of business. So what happens is, as regulations are created, business says, hey, how can we use this to destroy our competition? And a Walmart will say, we want everyone to comply to having a wheelchair ramp. And that will put out all these little competitors. And what'll happen is they'll have no competition and they'll dominate the market. And that's when we complain, oh, why is Walmart so evil? Like, why is it controlling everything? And it's because we've given it that control in adding these regulations. So what happens is, like, a well-intentioned politician, is just trying to create accessibility and trying to help people that are disabled have access to stores and whatever. Well, indirectly, they've actually reduced the number of businesses within an industry, because what happens is not everyone within that industry can afford that extra cost. And what ends up happening is these things create what's called a barrier to entry. And in business, one of the things when you're investing in business, you look at is, what is the barrier to entry? So if there's a high barrier to entry, like a high cost, like accessibility rules would be one, but there's other things that can cost a business to make it very expensive to set up of that business. Well, if there's a lot of barriers to entry, then it's a good investment to buy something that's already established, because you know that it's going to take time for any competitor to come out, or it's very difficult for competitors to come into that field. So there's very little competition, so it's a good investment because it's pretty much a monopoly. And this is the effect of government regulation. It's done for a good reason, but it ends up creating monopolies and creating these oligarchies. And those are the things that everybody hates. Everybody's like, I hate monopolies. I hate these, like concentrated wealth. And it's because of government regulation. So as I was saying, it's not that capitalism corrupts government. It's that government corrupts capitalism. And this is something that most people don't understand, how regulations work, that they often work against the people that they're actually trying to help. Because if you create these regulations, basically what you're doing is you're limiting competition, and you're giving people less choice. And choice is always a good thing. You want to have lots of competition. And the free market, if it's allowed to go on, can actually create the very environment you're looking for. So if you're looking for accessibility, well, you're more likely to achieve that when you have lots of businesses that are offering services. And generally what will happen is if businesses feel that they're going to lose out by not being accessible, they will generally make themselves accessible. As I said, like small shops, what they'll do is they'll actually literally dedicate an employee to helping somebody that is in a wheelchair and helping them into the store, because they don't want to lose that client. They don't want to lose that customer. So there's always ways that businesses will try to accommodate because they want to serve as many people as possible. So often these regulations are not required, but they sound good. They make people feel good. And when we generally have a freer market where we don't have to have the government telling us what to do, generally the world's a better place. And that's it. Thank you. This has been Socially Triggered. Bye for now.